I've got a handgun that fires grenades, I'm a badass preacher man, and this is Barrage. Let's talk about the mess that is early access. For those of you incredibly out of the loop, early access is a Steam feature which allows developers and publishers to sell unfinished games as long as they're stamped with the early access label. The concept is that people who buy into an early access game know that they are buying into an unfinished product. The result has been varied, to say the least. There's no system of accountability holding developers responsible for finishing the unfinished products they've put up for sale, which can leave people feeling frustrated. There have been success stories for sure, but they're overshadowed in virality by the failures, scams, and no-shows. This has caused a lot of people to avoid early access titles entirely as a matter of policy. And Valve's storefront on Steam features filters which allow you to block early access titles from showing up on your front page. There are a number of problems that come with the arbitrary label of early access. It's great for allowing developers to sell players on concepts and some gameplay if they're going to go through with it, but if not, early access status is generally treated by the community as a beta. The two terms are practically interchangeable. Thus, early access games will run into the same obstacles that betas sometimes suffer. For example, if a developer continues to make promises and updates for the community after they've released an early access game, but these changes are not reflected in the game, and the game never leaves early access, well, that's an abuse of the system. And a developer may be motivated to do this because there's always going to be people who will defend early access titles / betas by saying it's still an early access / it's still a beta, as if this somehow excuses all of the time that the developer has spent possibly in development, not actually making the changes that have been promised. If the game exits early access but is still not complete, which also happens all the time, then that's an abuse of the system as well. This brings up an interesting question though. What exactly constitutes a complete game? Digital distribution has completely changed the way that games are managed from a development standpoint. Just a few years ago, updates as a method of improving and balancing gameplay were unpopular. You bought a game, and that game was what you ended up with. No changes in the future, except perhaps a technical patch to fix bugs or compatibility or input issues. Now, however, the paradigm has shifted. When a complete game has been released, there's still the possibility of continued support, either in the form of paid-for downloadable content or free content releases intended to sell more game copies and encourage the player base to keep playing. Capcom, for example, is especially notorious for challenging traditional business models as they released 4 separate versions of Street Fighter IV, the same game, with changes to the content and the user interface. The lovely game I'm playing here is Killing Floor 2, which is currently in early access and likely will be for several months to come. As the sequel to a popular survival co-op title of the same name, it's still missing my favorite class from the first game, the sharpshooter, and Killing Floor 2 has been in early access for months. On top of that, the developers have promised more maps and even more boss monsters. There's currently only one. If the first game was any indication as well, there will be endless loads of DLC, both free and paid for, coming out for years after Killing Floor 2 is released. So when's the game finished? Not necessarily when it comes out of early access, because early access status is just a meaningless, arbitrary title. You could say that the game is more or less finished right now. It has 6 fully fleshed out classes with a sizable variety of weapons, although there's significantly less than in Killing Floor 1. All of the enemies from the first game are present in a small collection of maps with beautiful graphics, destructible lighting, hidden pickups, and 4 difficulty levels. Killing Floor 2 even has features that the first one lacked, such as sprinting, weapon-based experience gain which isn't restricted based on current class, character customization, etc. However, the developers haven't delivered on everything that they've promised us. We currently have a game that I definitely say is worth paying the asking price of $20 for, but is it finished? What's going to determine that it's finished? Instead of me simply telling you when a game is or is not finished, I suggest that perhaps it's better to treat every game as if it's unfinished. Instead of looking at what exists now and comparing it to what is supposed to exist, it seems healthier to me to assume that whatever you're looking at when you're checking out an early access game is exactly what you're going to get and no more. Look at it as pragmatism. This has been Barrage.